Hey everybody, I'm really happy to be here with you today. I know y'all are reviewing this online, but I want to give you a little bit of insight into how public libraries kind of work with archival collections, at least from our standpoint here in Georgia. First and foremost, let me introduce myself a little bit. I'm Josh Kitchens. I am the current director of the Department of Georgia Public Library Service, or oftentimes called GPLS, known as Archival Services and Digital Initiatives. Some of you may know I previously did teach at Clayton State, but I've also worked in archives for a number of years, mostly at the university systems, but doing some consulting work and some contract work on a couple different collections, including at the Fox Theater. And I also teach courses for SAA. Right now I've been kind of doing the digital forensics course more often than not. And so that's sort of a rough idea of my background. Gives you a rough idea of my background. And of course, you'll feel free to ask me more kind of questions about that. And since we pause on the screen, you can kind of see my kind of educational background. Quick note, whenever we talk about GPLS, we always kind of want to try to introduce what it is we try to do at GPLS. So GPLS is the organization, kind of, some places this might be called the state library. We are specifically focused on helping all of our state library systems, our state's library systems, and promoting that work. We receive funding through IMLS each year to help us support that work, in addition to a lot of really great state funding as well, especially for things like some salaries and buildings maintenance, as well as materials budgets, and so forth. So a couple of things we do here at GPLS is that we are, especially in our office, is trying to encourage and provide really great leadership. In many respects, you can think of a lot of the departments at GPLS, whether they're providing direct services or not, as sort of this kind of cadre of consultants to help all of our library systems, librarians, library staff around the state. Another thing, of course, we try to do, and something my office tries to do a lot too, is ensuring equal access to information and technology. That's not just for the libraries themselves, but the library communities, the library patrons. Of course, inspiring lifelong learning, and then kind of doing a lot of collaboration among different libraries, library systems, and kind of allied organizations around the state. Kind of want to dig into deeper about what we do at Archival Services. We kind of have a few core categories of projects that we do. That includes working on digitization, and I'm going to kind of talk about some digitization things we do. We also help with supporting some of special collections materials. I use the word special collections here because it makes the most sense for libraries. I'll kind of explain what I mean by special collections. We also do some work in helping consult on oral histories. We help with a lot of continuing education, so we're doing workshops and learning cohorts, as well as we help with various other kinds of digital projects. I'll talk about a few of those in just a minute. And then we can also be sort of secondary grant support for any libraries that are wanting to work on collections. So first and foremost, I want to kind of give insight. I know at the Master of Archival Studies program, you're going to be spending a lot of time kind of talking about what is an archive. And in the standpoint of kind of public libraries in the state, that is a really sort of complicated kind of piece of it, kind of piece to try to set down exactly what one term is. You will have all, of course, probably dealt with a lot of really great definitions of what an archive is, but the way things look in public libraries, we've sort of settled on the term special collections. And the reason for that is that some of our libraries have what we would consider traditional archival collections. Some of these are community records, some of these are organizational records, and it's really great timing that my light. Those are sort of our archival collections. Sometimes we'll also see a lot of genealogy collections. Now, these can be books, personal genealogy records, family kind of files, on a variety of different grab bag things, sometimes even including the governmental records. We'll also see local history collections. These are mostly as vertical files, but they can be lots of different things, from video to audio to you name it. We've kind of probably seen it. And then kind of last but certainly not least, we have these sort of community and cultural collections. And we've just sort of, as a department, and we're a department of 2 people, decided that this is the best term we can work with, that is, one, understandable to us, understandable to our constituents of professional librarians and library staff, as well as encompasses everything that we see in our collections is become special collections. And so that's the term we go for, that's the term we focus on, but it encourages a lot, it includes a lot of different things, but we tend to try to practice as much archival principles and practices on as many of the collections as we can, with making allowances and affordances when things don't fit in perfectly. So in terms of work we do for digitization, we have a couple of programs that sort of allow the libraries themselves to do their own digitization work. This includes our DigiKits. Our DigiKits are basically kits that contain equipment for the libraries to use to do their own digitization, and then also training on Community Scan Day as well. So Community Scan Day kits that we have a smaller size portable scanner and a laptop. Our primary DigiKits are large, extra XL scanners that have both photo and negative capabilities, and can do up to about 11 by 17 size materials on a flat basis. Outside of that, we end up doing a lot more support on kind of a technical aspect of it. And this includes reviewing metadata for projects that our libraries are doing. This includes also writing metadata. We have done a lot of that where a library will do the scanning, but they don't have the capacity to do the metadata creation themselves. Sometimes we're doing project management. One thing we've sort of been allowed to do is expand how we think about working with programs with our libraries, specifically bringing in exterior partners such as historical societies or other groups to think about what we can do in terms of providing materials for our community. I oftentimes think about this as kind of special collection development work, whereas that we're going to make the library's resources better by engaging with other organizations. And then sort of and kind of helping manage those projects, make those connections, and move materials between different sources. Our primary kind of point of access for all the materials from public libraries in the state is the Digital Library of Georgia. So we are in pretty much constant communication with the DLG on the different types of projects that may be coming and what we're about to see. And last but certainly not least, we have a small bit of funding that we can use for doing digitization projects, wherein we would pay a vendor to do the digitization work for us. Sometimes that vendor is the Digital Library of Georgia. Sometimes it can be another vendor, such as one of the many vendors that you might be encountering with, such as Backstage Library Works, and or any of the many AV vendors that are out there. So other things we do, we also do various kind of like special collections related support. So sometimes this is basic preservation support. So talking about temperature, humidity needs, talking about the current state of collections, and trying to come up with preservation supports. We do preservation approaches for different libraries that might need to be used for this. We also will use some of our funding that's available to us to purchase supplies such as boxes, folders, photo sleeves, you name it. We will purchase it and provide it. We also recently had a large purchase of scrapbook boxes that we delivered around the state. We will also do archival processing. So I mentioned earlier that we were a kind of a team of 2. It's myself, and then we have a position of local archivist. And the local archivist is sort of charged with working directly with libraries and potentially other organizations to do that sort of at least initial archival management piece for collections. So this could be simple things like inventories, doing descriptive work, rehousing materials, as well as creating finding aids. Currently, we actually provide access to archive space to all of our public libraries with the intent of having a centralized search platform for all but all collections, and I'm still calling things special collections that we can find in public libraries that make the most sense to go into archive space. Some book collections, of course, will go into the library's catalog system, and we will probably cross-reference things in the archive over into the library catalog as well. But we want to provide a centralized management point for our libraries. When we talk about grant support, we can be sort of a partner as well as provide some of that kind of in-kind support for different grants. Sometimes we can use the funding that's available to us to do matching funds and help with those different kinds of projects on some kind of financial scale. And then also technical support. And then above and beyond that, we're always sort of suggesting grants, making some of the ideas about what they could use for those grants available, and just generally promoting different opportunities that are available to our public libraries. In terms of digital projects that I mentioned earlier, we are constantly kind of expanding what we mean by a digital project. One of our sort of more successful platforms that we have right now is a Omeka instance for all of our public libraries. And basically Omeka, as we've been using it, has been more of a digital exhibit platform where libraries have taken advantage of previously digitized materials that are in the DLG to create online exhibits for those collections and kind of provide sort of a mediated kind of insight into those collections. Of course, we're constantly kind of thinking about what new things could we do. Do we want to do some mapping stuff? Do we want to create different types of experiences? And we're always sort of suggesting, talking, encouraging our libraries when they have kind of the bandwidth to come up with some new and interesting ideas that we might can support and fund. When it comes for doing a lot of our work, we end up dealing with a lot of digital materials, whether they be digitized materials or native-born digital materials. And so to do the sort of job of managing these materials beyond the sort of traditional archival software such as ArchiveSpace and spreadsheets and other fun things like that, I kind of have a grab bag of tools. And I kind of have thought about these sort of digital preservation tools as kind of in 4 different kind of categories. There's identification tools, there's transport tools or tools for moving things from one place to another, monitoring tools, and then unfortunately I kept trying to come up with a good category for everything else, but basically it's the other category, the category I need for various tools because they do certain things really, really well, and that has been the basis, and they've saved my neck more than one time. So when I talk about identification tools, basically what I mean with an identification tool is a tool that can tell me a lot of information about that digital item, that digital object. Typically, this might be file type. This might be other information about it. Some of these programs can actually do the creating an initial hash value when we're first looking at things. So they can just tell me a lot of information about it, such as creation date, edit date, those kinds of basic information. My 2 favorite tools are Jhove and Droid. Jhove is put out by the UK National Archives. Droid is also another open source tool. To me, these are really great tools for looking at a set of files, identifying something about them, and then if you need to export that metadata out, you can, or you can just use them sort of for initial review. When we talk about transport tools, these are tools for moving materials from one place to another. It's rare that we need to do a full disk image of a collection of a materials, but if I need to, I always have FTK Imager, which is a program for doing kind of initial capture of, doing a forensic digital capture of a drive, no matter how big or small, as well as doing some kind of review and understanding of it. You can kind of do some review and see sort of the file types and where materials are at, how much stuff is there. Another program I use a lot is WinSCP, which is actually a tool for moving materials basically to a secure server. It used to be everybody used FileZilla. I have problems with FileZilla. There seems to be a lot of like spammy applications that seem to be downloading with FileZilla, so I've moved over to a program called WinSCP, which is just a sort of a traditional file movement from one server to another. And then, of course, I didn't want to just pick one, but we do end up using a lot of different zip utilities to move files around. A zip file is a lot easier to move than, say, 200 files. Like just this afternoon, I was sent 202 finding aids, and we're moving them around with zipped versions of those folders up into our Google Drive setup that we have. There are also tools for monitoring, and when I'm talking about monitoring, what I'm really talking about is whether or not files have changed or degraded or something along that line. Typically, my approach to monitoring is to work with checksums and hashed values. So a checksum is a program that creates something called a hash value. You can, while this is not a perfect analogy, you can think of a hash file as a little bit of a fingerprint from a file, at least at a certain moment in time. And if that hash value changes, that little string of numbers that it generates from the checksum, that can tell you whether or not something has happened to the file. Either it's been edited, it's degrading, or something else. And the way we do this to review and monitor files is either through a command line tool, which is very more often than not the fastest way to do it, or my sort of new favorite program for doing this is a Windows-based application called File Verifier++. A really neat tool, can generate hashes, you can create a file, and then you can go back in and use that file to check those hashes again on a regular basis. Really good for small amounts of material. When you're getting above 2 terabytes, it kind of lags out and stops functioning as well as we would like it. In terms of other tools to kind of finish up with, I use a lot of different things for kind of different reasons. Some tools are about looking at the metadata, such as Jupyter or MPEG, which is really good for audiovisual materials. Or if we're looking at images and really wanting to look really deep into the metadata, we would use the open source tool EXIF tool. Sometimes, if really needed to dig into a set of files really deeply, I keep a program that's open source called Autopsy laying around. Autopsy is a digital forensics tool, and I should note that Autopsy was really created for the justice community, and specifically doing investigations into various digital crimes, as well as other kind of things like lawsuits. So it's not perfectly aligned with how we think of archives, but it does allow us to look for things, do global searches on file metadata, to look for certain types of files, even to, if we have a known hash value, to try to do that kind of search, as well as review personal identifiable information, PII, as well. So it's a really wonderful and great tool. So I know this was a really quick introduction to what we do at GPLS. I look forward to any and all questions you have, and happy to talk through any of them that you might have. Thank you very much. Have a great one.